Colonel Gautam. Well, we come from the same organization, Defense Studies and Analysis. My writings are on the geopolitics of Asia, on security, foreign affairs, and diplomacy. But I have a focus. I have a focus on a region which is Indian neighbors, but they are not South Asian neighbors. India's non-South Asian neighbors. There is nothing called Indian non-South Asian neighbors in our discourse. But China is our neighbor, but not South Asia. We also have, Afghanistan is a member of SAARC, but we don't consider Afghanistan to be a member of South Asia as such. Then we have this region called Central Asia, which is also our neighbors, but not South Asia. In our literature, people call this region High Asia. Some people call it Inner Asia. But bureaucratically now this is called Central Asia, partially Central Asia, because it's only the Russian-controlled Central Asia which has been liberated. The Chinese-controlled Central Asia is yet to be liberated. So Central Asia is not complete. But anyway, this is the focus of my research for many, many years. And it's a fascinating region. It's a region which is not India. It is a region which is not China. It is a region which is not Russia. It is a region which is not Persia. It is a region which is not Arabic. So what is it? It is the periphery of all the big civilizations. It is the periphery of China, it is periphery of India, it is the periphery of Persia, it is the periphery of Arab world, it is the periphery of even Islam, and it is the periphery of Russia. So it is the center of peripheries. All the peripheries meet there. People call it Pamir. In our own Sanskrit literature, we have Mount Meru. No, not Mount Meru, sorry. Tushita heaven is supposed to be lying there. So it is a very fascinating region, and the history and the politics of this region is like onion, piyaz, where you have many, many layers. You peel one layer, you have another layer. You peel that layer, you have underneath there is another layer. So you have a region which has a rich history after history, which means imposition of history and superimposition of history. So you peel one layer, you find another layer. So there is a saying that if you dig an Uzbek, scratch an Uzbek, you will find a Mongol underneath. If you scratch a Mongol, you find a Tatar underneath. And if you scratch a Tatar, you will find a Turk underneath. So you have so many complex history and politics there. It's very difficult to. So that is why I said it's the center of peripheries, but where Indian civilization also had a share of its history during the times of Kanishka, that most of our trade route used to go through Central Asia even to China. On the Silk Route, even Buddhism traveled to East Asia, to China and Japan through this region. They did not travel through the Himalayas. They first went to Central Asia and they went to China. Now, I have been in this region for many, many years and also served there in some capacity. But my current book is on Kyrgyzstan, where I served there for 3 years. It's a book called, it is called Central Asia, Democracy, Instability and Great Gain. Although the book is focused on Kyrgyzstan, but it tells you about this region. And this book is through my own interaction with people there, what I've seen, what I've observed. And although I was a diplomat, but I used to mingle with people there, with all the local people, and my face resembled with those people. So I was quite comfortable living with those people in the societies they did. So it's about a politics which is, they just came out of the Soviet control 20 years ago. So Soviet Union collapsed and these people, these 5 countries came up and they're trying to find their own identities. Now in this finding their own identities, they have difficulties in finding a political system. Now most of these countries are still controlled by old Soviet regime or Soviet authoritarian style of leadership. So there are tendencies of democracy. Only in this country where I have served, some kind of a democratic culture has been introduced. But it's not a perfect democratic system, but it came about because of some revolutions. You must have heard about color revolution, you know, the Velvet Revolution, Pink Revolution, Tulip Revolution, all these kind of revolutions have occurred in the post-Soviet space. So part of this book is focused on how this democracy has evolved, and it's not a perfect democracy. Since 2010 we have this parliamentary democracy kind of a setup, and then the next chapter is more on the instabilities. Now there are a lot of issues about instabilities. There are sources of instabilities like Islam, terrorism, water conflict, conflict of over energy, conflict over land and territory, conflict over border resolution. So whole region is yet to be evolved as a stable region. It's a very, very new region. It's an old region, which I told you is thousands of years old region, but it has re-emerged on the international scene, and all the tendencies of becoming a perfect state, nation state, is in play. So therefore they have a lot of conflicts coming up, and most of my chapters in this book is focused on the internal instabilities, which I think will take about 2 to 3 decades more. But interesting thing about this region is that unlike you see in the Arab world, where you have all this Arab Spring and revolutions coming up in Syria, Egypt and Libya and others, here this region, these conflicts among themselves have not been allowed to cross a certain threshold. Conflicts have not come to a stage where they started fighting among themselves. These are well controlled, very nuanced kind of the solutions are found, and above all, this region is still under the control of the Russian security structure. So there is an arm in which these countries can fall, which is the Russian arm. So you don't expect for the next 10 to 15 years this region becoming another Arab Spring kind of, or Egyptian, Syrian kind of a situation. The other aspect of the book is about the great game. Lots of big powers are playing games there for a variety of reasons. They played games about nuclear weapons. You know, Soviet Union had more than 2,000 nuclear weapons stationed in these territories. So it's about how to denuclearize. Can you imagine 5 Muslim countries with nuclear weapons? So this was challenged. This was one of the most fundamental challenges for international